Hello, everybody. This is my effort in trying to shepherd everybody to their seats. Or drag out more seats. It's nice to see a turnout. Okay. I'll just wait for Ted. Okay, I think we're going to get started. It's fantastic to see everybody. I want to welcome everyone tonight. If you don't know me, I'm Sass Mather, and I'm actually here to just welcome you on behalf of the Bicentennial Committee. And thank you really for joining us tonight. It's a special night here for us. And this evening, you know, as a part of the ongoing events that are slated for this summer, and specifically for this summer. But tonight, I'm actually really happy to have Tad Pfeffer, a notable longtime Randolphian and resident here, to share a lot of the details and insights of his light detection and ranging, or LIDAR project. So along with you, I'm going to be learning a lot of what this entails and get his insights as well. The research encompasses a look into the local historic walls, roads, cellar, holes, etc. So we're really excited to hear how this work was done by Ted and learn about the stories it tells of Randolph's past. Incredibly fitting as we celebrate the town's historic milestone. We have been told that the imagery and the data that you'll see are really fascinating, so I'm really looking forward to this. We are filming as well, and the camera is up front here, so that those who couldn't join us, it'll be made available in some fashion or in some manner for those who couldn't make this particular presentation. So with that, I'm actually just going to hand it over to Tad.
That was good timing. I just got through with this. Okay. Here, put this down somewhere. I'm going to have to come back and fool with that in a minute or two. Okay, so how did I get interested in this? I'm not sure how I got interested in this. As a lot of you know, I was a glaciologist for most of my career, which I just retired from last month. But in the last 10 years, I was mostly teaching surveying, and I actually worked as a surveyor years ago. And LIDAR has become a very important tool in all kinds of many industries and disciplines. It's become a very valuable tool in surveying, in landscape management, in geology, and in construction and engineering, and we'll see what it's about. But of course, the primary focus here, the purpose of all of this, is to try to learn something about what the town looked like a century and 2 centuries ago. And we know that, you know, when people first came to settle Durand and start farming here, it was probably mostly forest. And now, hang on for just a second. I'll explain at some point what I'm doing here. I'm not actually just, you know, like checking the news or anything.
Keep remembering to put your mouth pretty close to the microphone.
Okay.
Please. I have a feeling that I'll be able to understand you better if I can hear you better.
Or we spoke English.
That too. Yeah. I'll have to do that differently later on.
When the hors d'oeuvres coming?
Okay, we'll get back to that. Okay, well, so when settlers arrived in Randolph, they started clearing land for farming. As you probably know, very little of the Randolph area was actually cleared for cultivation. That mostly occurred up on Randolph Hill, along the ridge top, and down in the valley, but this is very poorly drained glacial moraine. For the most part, pretty much unusable for cultivation, and of course a great deal of work involved in clearing stones and stumps to actually have, to till the soil and plant crops. So most of the land was used for grazing, but as we'll see, there's a fair amount of area that was stoned and stumped for cultivation. And we've, probably most of you have seen these pictures of Randolph at a time when the forest cover was much thinner than it is today. And in fact, the top of Randolph Hill at one point was essentially completely clear of trees from one end to the other. That started disappearing fairly quickly as the farming dropped off, which it did as it did throughout northern New England in the mid-19th century, as farmers started moving further west, first into New York and then Ohio and further on for much better farming conditions. I put this picture in here. This is from the Hinks Blatchford collection. My wife and I bought a house that had been in the Hinks family for a number of years, and like any house in Randolph, when you buy it, it comes with the previous owner's, the entire contents of their lifetime in the house. So we have all the papers and photographs from the Hinks family, and as well as some very nice china and furniture. But the interesting thing about this is you can see in the background here, right in this area here, there's still quite a bit of pasture land. This is probably, I'm guessing, early 20th century. That's going up Randolph Hill in the Midlands. Still quite a lot of cleared land. This is another picture. The Grainob was in the Hinks family before it was sold to the town when it became National Forest. Here's a photograph of Grainob from their collection. So what I've done, I'm working with two record sources which are quite difficult to mesh. One of them is the written record from the town which describes where people lived, where roads were proposed, where roads were abandoned at one end, and then at the other end, modern survey technology and a coordinate system which didn't exist in the 19th century. And it's proving to be quite difficult to mesh those two records for reasons that will become quite obvious. This here is one of the records in a box labeled Old and Interesting here in the town hall from 1825. And one of the things in this list, and this is a warrant for the town meeting, so this is what they're planning to talk about, to see if the town will accept of a road laid out by the selectmen. The grammar is a little bit confusing, and I may actually have it wrong here, but hang on for just a second. To see if the town will accept of a road laid out by the selectmen from the county road on the hill in the autumn of 1825. So we have that kind of information. I've found virtually no maps, and I've checked. Well, I've I've not been through every paper in the town hall, but I've been through a lot of them. I've been down in Concord at the State Library, at the Archive, and at the New Hampshire Historical Society. There's very little information there. There is information in the county courthouse in Lancaster, which I've not gotten to yet. One of the stories which I heard for years was that there was a fire in the Lancaster courthouse, Coos County Courthouse, in the 1880s, and all the records prior to that were lost. And that there was no point in going and looking. Well, it turns out not to be quite the case, because there was a fire in the 1880s, and a lot of records were partially destroyed. But many of them were reconstructed because the county sent out notices asking landowners to bring in their deeds to reconstruct records. And a lot of that was done. So the information is there. It's organized by landowner's name and by date. And I'm working more geographically. So again, there's going to be a little bit of work to be done to figure out their system. And I haven't gotten into that yet. I wonder if the fact that there are so few maps is because at some point somebody very helpfully took all the maps and said, okay, we're going to take all the maps and we're going to put them somewhere sensible. And of course, you know what happens when you do that. You know, you never see it again. But I certainly haven't come across many maps yet. So here are a few more examples of the kind of thing that we find in these records. Here's an excerpt from this in 1826. To see if the town will agree to discontinue the road running east from the northwest corner of Caleb Cushman's lot to the southwest corner of the lot that I think is Nathan Ordway lives on, laid out in the year 1826. So you see many of these things in the record as you go through time of roads being proposed and roads being abandoned. There's quite a few of them. And also remember that the records that I've got to look at are mostly copies made contemporaneous with the original document, and also mostly warrants, meaning they're posting what they're planning to do, not what they actually decided. So the record is not really solid, but it does give us a lot of clues as to where to look on the ground for some evidence of roads and houses. Now these lots that they're talking about, here is a map from 1903. This is from a survey done by Augustus Carter, who was a surveyor from Portland, Maine. The map is dated 1903, although there are some annotations. It's off the part here that I'm showing you that show some annotations made in 1937. So the map had been updated at some point. But what this shows is the southeast corner of the town laid out in this grid of rows and columns. Each row is a range. There's range 1, this is range 0 down here, it's a little add-on. But range 1, range 2, range 3, so forth, and then lot 1, lot 2, lot 3. So the intersection of a range and a lot gives you each one of these parcels. And deeds are written in terms of these lots, and the best information that I have got actually for specific land ownership that I've found so far comes from the 1888 history of Coos County, where the ownership of land through time is listed, and this is a sample of some of my notes. I've got these on the table, you can look at the end, where I've put in the names of the owners stated for each of the lots. And this is, you can see it is in the Randolph Hill area. You can see the Hill Road going along here. Here's Malcolm's Corner, so it used to be called, and here's the modern Route 2. And the names written in blue are the series of owners. And the information that we've got doesn't really give us any more precise location of where these people's properties were. And so we have a lot of descriptions of proposed roads that say, for example, going from the northwest corner of Lot 5, Range 5 to the southeast corner of Lot 2, Range 6, something like that. It's not very specific. There are some more specific surveys that have been described. Here's one, for example, from 1828, which describes a road which sounds a little bit like an early Randolph Hill Road, and I've superimposed it here on the map. You can see the text of the road orientation, which starts from the road leading from, and S with a T subscript. I don't know what that means. Center? Anyway, from Randolph to Shelburne, on the line between lots 3 and 4 on the 4th range. So here's the 4th range, here's lot 3, here's lot 4. So it's along here, it starts there. The blue line that you see is following the compass directions and the distances as described. I'm having to assume here that the surveyor was working in magnetic north, not true north. You can see that there's a red line there indicating the actual north orientation. The vertical lines that are separating the lot columns are oriented at typically 12 degrees east of north. I'm having to assume, for lack of any better information, that the baryons are magnetic. At no point do they say that they're magnetic or true, nor do they give a declination. Early on, when this kind of surveying was almost invariably done with reference to magnetic compass, they typically did use magnetic north. But what it describes is a road that starts here around the wood farm, goes up like this. It just happens to be exactly the same, the right distance to get it to the trace of Randolph Hill Road as shown on the map, and then runs across to here and then drops down in these two legs to here. This line here is from a transcription error that I found in one of the early copies that wrote this leg here, which is 118 rods, as 1.18 rods. If you use that number, this leg moves over here. And it doesn't really make any sense because the surveyor wouldn't run a line that was 1.18 rods. A rod is 16 and a half feet. And then going back further, I found an earlier version of this description, and it was 118 rods. But you can see that if there had been another error, it could even bring this over to the orientation of the present day bottom half of Randolph Hill Road, which has been there certainly for a very long time. Okay, so now I want to talk a little bit about the modern data that is available, and I want to get out of PowerPoint here for a minute and take you over to this Granite website. Let me see if I can do this. Okay, so here is the site. This is operated by the University of New Hampshire, and there is a wealth of information which is described here. I'm not going to spend too much time on it, but let me give you an example of, for example, if we go into the geology and geophysical layer, we can find things like soil types, and we're going to have to zoom in here, I think, before it'll show us anything. So these are all classified different soil types, and I have to monkey around a bit to get it to give its labels, and I don't want to spend too much time on this. Perhaps we have to be zoomed in further to get the labels. But these individual outlines each have a code, which then will tell you what kind, what the soil type is. Let's get out of here, and I will go to this is interesting, hydric soils. Hydric soils are soils which are so poorly waterlogged that you develop reducing conditions. There's not enough oxygen for material to rot. And so anybody that's walked in the woods here knows that there's a lot of soil that's like this in this area. And you can also look at farmland soils. Where's the good soil? The good soil is this purple color, and as you can see, there's not much good soil in Randolph. But there is, no, that's all other values. Here, there's good soil. There is a little bit of it in Randolph, but most of it is down here. Farmland of local importance. I'm not sure exactly what that means, but we all know that farming conditions here were very tough. But let's not spend more time on this. Let's get down to the really interesting thing, which is under elevation. And we're going to go into the LIDAR here. And let me, I guess I'm going to, I'll show you the LIDAR first, and then we will talk about where it comes from. It takes a little bit to load this data set up. Okay, so this is a LIDAR image of Randolph. This is the town line between Gorham over here and Randolph here. Route 2 going up Hodgson Hill here is very clear, but now as we zoom in, we can start to see Randolph Hill Road. I'm going to go out a tiny bit. And we can see Randolph Hill Road running up. There's the corner, Malcolm's Corner. Maybe now we're going to call it Hawkins Corner. And across to here, here is High Acres Road, Glover Spring Road. Okay. And as we zoom in further, we can see stone walls. These lines here on the side. There's also, of course, stone walls alongside the road almost everywhere along the hill. Places that have been leveled. This is the field in what was formerly Furness and is now, I'm not sure which family name to use, whether it's Sandon or what, but what was formerly the Furness family. This was done before Dyke and Lydia used and cleared their land, which is right over here. But so you can see these places where the land is obviously a great deal smoother. One thing you notice here, there are no houses on this. And what they've done is, in processing this data, they automatically take anything which looks like a structure and they remove it digitally. So you'll find, in place of houses, these little platforms like this. That's where a house would be standing, which they've taken away. That could cause problems sometimes. For example, there are probably a lot of large erratics, large rocks, which could be mistaken for a house in LIDAR imagery. And if you're using this for anything where it really matters, you do your own LIDAR processing in a GIS platform, which is not terribly difficult, but it's a reasonable amount of work. There's a lot of information in here, and I want to take a little bit of time now and talk about what LIDAR is and how we work with it. And I think I want to, before I go to that, I want to show you something else. What we're looking at here, the reason we can see these things so clearly, like little stone walls, is that this model of the terrain, because what in reality, in the computer, all this is a point cloud. It's 3D points. It's coordinates of the X and Y horizontal position of points very, very closely together, spaced together, accompanied by their elevation. And we can resolve very small differences in elevation. And it's been processed in a way that it looks like it would if it were being illuminated from the side at some fairly low angle. So that these walls, for example, here, this is being illuminated virtually from the left. So this side of the feature is a bright line, and the other side is a dark line. That's how we're able to see these things. If all you were looking at was the digital terrain model, in other words, you'd have a grayscale color, a number between 1 and 256, corresponding to its elevation, it would look like, now I gotta find the right one, that. there's not much. You got to zoom way out before you start seeing anything. Now you can start to see the high elevations in the mountains, for example. But if all you're looking at is elevation, you really can't see much of anything. What you have to look at is this same thing illuminated from the side. Okay, so let's get out of here and go back to our PowerPoint. And I am going to...
How is this data collected, Tad?
It is done, in this case, by aircraft. LIDAR can be done at many different scales. It can be done from satellites, it can be done from aircraft, it can be done by hand. And in fact, this is what I was hoping I would be able to do, was to quickly send this to my computer. You'll have to look at this later, but you can see it here. But this is a quick LIDAR scan of our room. And everybody's sitting in their chairs, but they're milling around, so their heads and legs that aren't in the right place. But you can see that there's the ceiling, there's the floor, there are the walls. You can take a look at this later. The newer iPhones and iPads have a LIDAR sensor in them so that you can actually collect this data yourself. This is really handy for builders and contractors and engineers for making quick measurements, doing as-built surveys, which if you're in the building industry, as-built surveys, critically important. They're the survey that tells you where things were actually put, not where the plan said they should be put. We'll have this for later. A little bit of show and tell stuff over there. Okay, so here's the basics of how LIDAR works. Fly along, in our case, with an airplane that is shooting a laser light in pulses many, many times, hundreds of thousands of points per second. It's shooting this laser down and then detecting the return, the reflection of this light off the ground. And the mathematics of this is quite simple. If you're flying some distance d above the ground, the electromagnetic radiation, the light, has to travel a distance 2d. It has to go down, get reflected off, and come back up. So the time it takes is the distance, 2d, divided by the speed of light. Or you can calculate the distance then by measuring the time. And the time times the speed of light divided by 2 gives you that distance, d. Then if you know very precisely where the airplane is, which you do from GPS measurements of the airplane, you know where the point is beneath you. Now, that speed of light, that's 3 times 10 to the 8, that c in there. So that is going to create some challenges right away. And, first of all, the light which is used is typically in the near infrared, typically 900 to 1500 nanometers. So just out of the visible range. And the 1550 nanometers is chosen partly because it is not harmful to your eyes if you happen to look up at it. And for instance, when I was doing the LIDAR scan of the room here, at least I hope none of you come down with cataracts. I don't think you will. Okay, now how about the resolution? We can resolve these stone walls. That means we've got a resolving power of the order of, actually, it's an order of centimeters. But if you think about a rock or a stone wall, that little delta D, some little distance, call it a half a meter. Then, to resolve that half meter, you have to be able to resolve a slice in time, a delta T, of 2 times that distance, delta D, divided by the speed of light. You end up down in the nanosecond range. So you have to be able to measure the travel time of this pulse down to the nanosecond level to be able to do this. And that's where the real magic of LIDAR comes in. Now the other part, the fact that the forest has disappeared, is handled this way. Every single pulse that comes down from the airplane reflects off of different surfaces as it goes down through, for example, forest canopy. Now, if it strikes a surface which is opaque, like the top of a building, then it doesn't go any further. But imagine for a moment you're walking through the forest on a sunny day. You know, you can see the sky here and there, and you can see the sun in bits and pieces on the ground. Well, the LIDAR can do the same thing. A lot of it is intercepted by the foliage, but a fair amount of it makes it to the ground. And for a single pulse, all of those returns coming from the foliage are arriving a little bit sooner than the return coming off the ground because it's a little bit closer. That 2D is a smaller distance. So by looking at the last return that comes back from any single pulse, that gives you the bare earth surface. Now, more of the magic in LIDAR processing is keeping track of which outgoing pulse at a couple 100,000 per second is the one that you're counting the returns from. I don't know how that's done. It is pretty magical. But that's how you remove the forest canopy. Okay, so here's what this looks like for Randolph. Now I want to zoom in here a little bit, look in a couple of different places, just to get you oriented. Here are the modern roads. Here's the hill road. Here's where it winds up and goes up to the trailhead up here. Here's the High Acres Road. Here's Glover Spring Road. Here's Stearns Road, Boothman Lane, and so forth. And here's Route 2 down here. Okay. This is the bottom of Carlton Brook and Mossy Glen. This is the river valley. And I should add here that I'm concentrating on Randolph Hill here before getting to other parts in the town. First, because this is the area where I've walked around a lot and actually found the stone walls. But also, for some reason, the walls up here on the hill are much more plentiful than they are down in the valley. And I don't know why that's the case, but I have a hard time finding anything that I can really latch onto as a wall or some other feature in the valley. I haven't looked as extensively as I have on the hill, but I've looked a fair amount. I'm not sure why that's the case. But anyway, the fishing's better up here, so that's where I'm going first. Now, I'm going to show you a couple of different regions. I broke this up into these 9 sub-scenes, and we're not going to look at all of them in detail, but we're going to look at a few of them. So let's start up in the northwest corner there. Okay, so we are up on the, come on, here's the Hill Road, okay? This is the High Acres Road going down. Here's the big clearing where the Furness, what was Furness, is. Yeah, of course, you know that any place that you live in it's always referred to by the person that lived there before. So, you know, if you've got a house, after you die, they'll start calling it your place. We go along a little bit further here. Here's Bill Arnold's house in Grassy Lane, and then it winds up here, takes a corner, and then here are the driveways that have been. This goes into Warewell, the Koopman House. This is a new road which has been added. This is the road which went into, or goes into what was originally Mumford, and is now Maggie Baker's place. And this is the road going up to the new Trails parking lot, and here's the big field, the open field that was made up there. Now you can see there's a lot of other stuff going on. There is some large-scale topography. This is glacial, although some of this has been dug into. But there are a lot of stone walls. You can see here, down like this, across like this, up like this. This this includes the what was originally the Koopman property, the Mumford Maggie Baker property. This is I actually don't know. Oh, that's Baker as well, I believe. This is what was the name of the guy that it was Lendetta, the Lendetta. Yeah. More stone walls, here, here, here. This is a drainage ditch. It's behind the Sissons house. Stone walls back here. Now we're getting back into Boothland Spring and the Mount Crescent House site. The Mount Crescent House site is right here. This is Campbell's. There's a lot of stuff going on back here, and you can see how smooth this surface is here relative to up here. There's sort of a fine-grained lumpiness here. This is land which has never been cleared of stones. This has been cleared of stones. There are a few other features here, and I'm going to turn on a layer here for a moment to identify some of these. The red lines are stone walls. The yellow lines are provisionally roads. That red circle in the middle is a stone pile, and there are several of these on the hill. These are places where there are so many stones that you can't put them all into walls, and these walls were not decorative. They weren't even designed as fences, really. They were just trying to get them out of the way. And the easiest way to get them out of the way if you're clearing a field for cultivation is to leave them right on the edge of the field, so they form a wall. But some places, there's so many stones that they have to yard them up into giant piles, and there are some huge piles out there. And I don't need to add that, the work involved in doing this is just unimaginable. When you walk around in the forest, you come across these things, and I've done a lot of walking around, particularly in this region here. And there are a lot of features. There are little fragments of walls all over the place. Some of them only, maybe 6 feet in length or something like that. And to positively identify these as walls, you really need to be out there and verify on the ground that they are what you think they are. You can get a lot of clues from the LIDAR, but you really have to be there to verify it. This is moving down the road a ways. This is Sugar Plum Farm. This is Sky Meadow. And we've got these walls that go way back. And again, cleared for cultivation. You can even see some lineation that looks like possibly old tillage moving in this direction. It's conceivable that could be a mowing pattern, but I don't think so. I think that would be removed in the processing. But all of this, this wall down here, this is along the pasture path. You can see this is the actually, this is the end of Stearns Road, the road part of Pasture Path. This is Lynn Hunt's place. But this is where the Pasture Path, the trail in the forest goes. And anybody who's walked along here knows that there's a great big wall along here. So it shows up very bright. If you walk up in this direction off of Pasture Path, there's also another very big wall here, and more of these stone piles. Again, this is what was the Furness house. And down here you can see this platform where a lot of rocks and soil were piled up when they did this clearing, what that was, 10 years ago maybe, something like that. It's possible there's a bit of an artifact in here that this is enough of a pile that the algorithm decided it was a structure and smoothed off the top of it, because it's very, very smooth. Smoother than it actually is when you look at it out there on the ground. So anyway, we're going down the hill. This is the Glines. No. Yes? Yeah, I think that's the Glines place. Yep. And if we continue on, here we are at Hawkins Corner. And this is Kelly's down here. This is where Pasture Path, Stearns Road goes in. There's a lot going on back here. There's a wall there. There are also a number of fragments of roads back here. There were some number of roads that went straight down into Gorham from here. And from the written records, it's not at all clear exactly where they were, how many there were. I've walked a number of these, and you can follow them for a long time. I have not sorted this area out at all yet. Here's another really good example of what the surface looks like when it has not been cleared of rocks. Okay, this small scale kind of rubbly fur on this. And you can see here, it's smoother. This has been rocked, and it's a lot smoother up in here. Now, if we continue, actually now we're going to jump back. We're going to go over here to the middle column. We're going to go over to the west end again, and I'm not going to go through each one of these in great detail. Although, actually, this one I'm going to come back to. This is, again, High Acres Road. Here's the crosses back here, the crosses field. Here's the extension down to Clement and Parlett and the Brown's house down here. This is the, I believe that is the beeline, but it might be one of the logging roads. These are all logging roads and roads that have been developed as ski trails over the years, combined with a lot of, these are drainage features. And I'm going to come back to this in a little bit, but I'm not going to talk about it quite yet. This is the Pfeffers, my parents' house. Angela lives now. This is really interesting. This road here, you couldn't find this today. 60-some years ago, my parents had some very close friends named the Joneses who used to come up all the time. And at one point they were camping or tenting down here, and they put a sign down here on this road because there was a little bit of a clearing in here where they were camped. And they put up a sign that said Jones's Pad, and it was stuck onto a tree. It was written on a piece of paper towel and it stuck on with a thumbtack. I don't know if this has ever happened to you, but whenever I walk down there, I find myself looking for that sign. You know, like it's still going to be there 60 years later. You cannot find this on the ground, but you can see it in the LIDAR. And this is a logging road, I think dating back to prior to 1949. This area had been logged recently when this originally, the Woodruff House, was built. Many more fascinating features. And as we get down lower on the hill, it gets to be quite difficult to separate out the old from the new, because this area has been logged quite a bit in the modern era, if you want to call it that. Whoops, I just went. Somehow I jumped back a long way. Okay, that's where we just were. Now we're going to go into the center. Now this is an interesting feature right here. Now we're going to have to jump up a little bit, but this is a stone wall. This is the diagonal path. This is the end of Boothman Lane. This is the end of Woodspring Road. Here's the Cormiers. So if you've gone in from the Cormiers, you take their little trail in, and it leads you to the diagonal. And if you walk along here, you step over this stone wall just before you meet the wood path, which goes down. It's in this area here. You can't quite see it. I haven't been able to pick out the wood path. But anyway, this wall goes all the way from the clearance up on the hill road down to the wood farm. And this is an old road. This is one of the first roads that was proposed. And I haven't got the documentation copied for the vote to put this road in. I mean, when it came to doing things like building roads, I'm sure that people were just as smart as we are today back 200 years ago. And why they did a road that ran straight down slope in this mucky stuff, I don't know, because the road was abandoned only a few years later for obvious reasons. But you can still walk the entire stone wall all the way down to the bottom. It's a massive stone wall. This is a cellar hole. And here's another cellar hole. These are around here. There's a third one up here. It's very hard to know who those were because there's no written documentation of so-and-so lived here, with here being specific enough to say, beyond which lot and range parcel it was in. Okay, now we're back. Here's the hill road. This is Kelly's. This is the road going down to the Gorham, the reservoir for the Gorham water system. This is this gorge here developed during during Irene. This washed out in a big way. This is a trough which is about 4 feet across, or 4 feet across and 4 feet deep, something like that. And really, a lot of water went through there. And so that part is brand new. A lot of this is probably pretty new. And again, this is very poor soil, and nobody ever, did anything down here. But I haven't marked it here. This is one of these stone piles. And I haven't got a length scale here, but this stone pile is probably 100 feet by 50 feet by 25 feet high, mostly comprised of rocks this size and smaller. It's just enormous. If you walk down to the end of the road, if you're familiar with that, the first thing you come to is a little house on your right, which actually holds a wellhead. And if you just cut into the woods there and just go straight east, a couple hundred feet, you'll bump into this. And you can find you can find a sledging track that goes upslope into this area here. Here's another stone pile here, where was obviously where they were moving the stones in a sled when they were clearing this land originally. Now there's not much in this one. This is down at, this is again Carlton Brook going through Mossy Glen. This is the Beeline. This is the Burnbrae Path. The diagonal, I don't remember which one. I think this is the diagonal. And when you're using the Granite Viewer, you can toggle this off, on and off, over a trail map, and you can just see quite clearly where these are. These are more drainage features in the slope, and a mixture of roads of kind of uncertain age. We don't really know what they are. Here's a big logging road down here. And if we go a little bit further, this is Route 2, that's Raycrest. Over on the, wait a minute, I got my pictures mixed up. This is the southeast corner, because this is the bottom of the hill road. This is Raycrest. This is the Grandview. See, there's the little platform where the Grandview Lodge should be. This is the pond that was at the Eisenbergs. There's not much to be seen in here. Here's the power line. And then probably if we go to the next one, it'll be the one to the east, to the west of that. Yep. So these are the houses that are just off of Woodspring Road. This is the Scarinza Sugar House down here. Again, a big cleared field and a giant pile of rocks at the bottom. There's the continuation of that stone wall going down. You start to lose it for a while, but it comes back just before the wood farm is going to be, right down here. It's pretty dramatic. Now, here are a couple of interesting details. We're going back to the western edge of all of this. We're at High Acres again. And I said I would come back to this thing. This is the original alignment of the pasture path. When the Crosses bought this property in the 1960s, the pasture path trail going to Lookout Ledge followed this course, as trails did at that time. It went right through your backyard and into the woods. And like everybody else, when the Crosses got the property, they had the trail moved, and now it's up here. And if you look back here, again, this is the High Acres Road. This is what was McDowell's, and the trail goes along here. This is Grassy Lane, and I've put this red dotted line a little bit off to the side so that you can see immediately below it. See that faint line going across? That's where the pasture path is today. It goes out to the western boundary of the Crosses property and then goes straight south. And if you've hiked that, you know that you've taken that right angle corner. Well, the original alignment of the pasture path, if you look along that, you see there's a hole there, there's another hole there, there's another hole there. These are all old cellar holes. We don't know much of anything about them. I've explored all of them. I've made some LIDAR maps of the holes themselves that I haven't processed. They're very difficult to photograph. You know, everything's in trees, and you have a very difficult time getting a sense of the three-dimensional shape of this hole, and it's covered in brush, so pictures don't really help very much. However, Bill Arnold, oh, wait a minute, cellar holes, and I've got to remember all the fancy things that I've done here. Bill Arnold described meeting somebody, he thought back in the 1990s, meeting a man who showed up in town looking for these cellar holes. And he said that his family was there named Rand, and that somebody, Bill thought it was the man's father, had lived in one of these houses. And there are Rands in Randolph. You can find them in the cemetery. Stephen Rand died in 1912, Carrie Rand in 1906, and so forth. I don't know anything about the Rand family other than that, and this is from 1891, and this is again in a warrant, to see if the town will vote to discontinue that portion of road leading from the, somebody's got a good imagination, maybe they can help me figure out what that crossed out and blotted word is, but it's been replaced by William Lovell, I think, so-called on Randolph Hill Road to the Stephen Rand place. So they're discontinuing a road that led to Stephen Rand's place from somewhere. Now, we don't know where. William Frank, I don't know where William Frank's place is. So there are all of these little tantalizing puzzles. And of course, you know, some of you probably have stories that will help fill in some of these holes, in which case I'd sure like to hear about them. Okay, I wanted to show you one or two more things before I quit here. I'm going to stop in just a moment. Eric Sandin told me about this just a couple of weeks ago. He said he'd been up to Bumpus Basin to the old logging camp, and you can follow the old logging road still. That's quite easy to get to. Yeah, so you've seen it. And if you look here, and I'm gonna scroll this picture in a minute, but this is the start of the new Dollycop Road. Okay, this is the rail trail. There's the county yard. Randolph East is right around here somewhere, and the Howker Ridge Trail comes up through here somewhere. Might be here, I can't quite pick it up in this projected image. But what Eric said was that if you follow the Howker Ridge Trail right to where you cross Bumpus Brook, just before you cross the brook, keep your eyes open on the right-hand side and you'll pick up the logging road. And sure enough, right there it is. I'm going to scroll this image past, and you can follow this all the way up into the top of the basin. And I can't control the speed of this thing, but it goes up through here. And let's see if I can, there's a bit of it there. We're losing some resolution in the projected image, but you can follow enough of it as you go along here. There's a bit of it there. You can see that it is pretty much continuous, going all the way up into the top of the basin. So there's a lot of that kind of thing that you can do here as well. Here's the last thing I'll mention. We've zoomed out quite a ways now. We are looking at this is Gorham and Berwyn. Here's Route 2 going through Randolph. This is the Randolph Hill area. This is Mount Crescent. This is the Ice Gulch. This is Carlton Brook coming down through Mossy Glen. And the glacial geology of this area, which I do not know at all well, there is a proposed Lake Crescent that sat back here. And most of what is known about this, I guess, is more to the northwest and to the west. But it's very suggestive when you look at the Ice Gulch and Carlton Notch, and probably this thing too. that a lot of water moved through these things at one time or another. You look at the size of the gorge at Mossy Glen, and not just the bowls where the water runs down, but that whole steep-sided valley that Carlton Brook is in. That had to be moving a lot of water at some point and eroding a lot of material, which means it was carrying a very heavy load, bed load. These may have been, whoops, coming backwards here. These may have been spillways, outlets from that Lake Crescent. If you follow the bottom of Ice Gulch down into Gorham, this is where the giant sand and gravel pit is. Big sandy deposit, which is just exactly what you would expect to find at an outlet like this. So that's about where I stand at the moment as far as identifying anything positively. I think the real work to be done at this point is in the historical records and trying to piece together land ownership and the location of things with a little bit more precision than we've been able to do so far. But just give you an idea of what you can do with this imagery, and I hope at some point to be able to tell a little bit clearer picture about what Randolph looked like 150 years ago, or 200 years ago. Thank you.
Chad, do you want to take questions?
Sure.
Anybody have
Yeah.
questions? I mean, that was really, I learned a lot. And only being here a mere 6 years, so it's really nice to kind of tie in some of the properties and people, et cetera. So, anybody have any questions?
I have
Edie.
sort of a comment.
Yes.
Yep.
As a youth, we went on occasional Cutterville surveying trips, and I wondered whether you had found this to be true elsewhere besides Randolph Valley. But over time, the lots and ranges didn't take into account the fact that views had become important. Views weren't a consideration apparently when you were starting to set up a little farm, a little cabin, what your view was going to be. But when summer people began to arrive, views became an important aspect. And the way the lots and ranges are set up, not necessarily would the angle be the one that the homeowner would want to control their own view.
Yeah.
And this was a big feature. And at various times, as a young person who was a landowner, I would be asked to sign something saying I was willing to have the angle changed, that the house view would be. And I'm just interested as to whether this is typical or whether the fact that the Cutters own so much acreage that this became a big feature. So we all were involved in making sure that we controlled our own view to the extent possible, because that's what we want when you don't have zoning.
I think that these range and lot lines, in the first place, were never defined in any very permanent way at all. If you come up and look here later, I've got a copy of this map here, and these intersections are indicated by here is a post, here is a birch tree. Here's some other kind of a tree. Here's another post. There's no way of recovering these now. And the thing is that the surveys, the deeds for most properties refer typically to the previous deed. So the assumption that everybody knows where the intersection of lot 4 range 5 and lot 4 range 6 is, because it didn't survey it. We didn't bother to survey it because there's a
post out there on the ground somewhere. And it's, you know, if you walk along the pasture path, you'll find a lot of iron pins. You find a lot of iron pins. It's very difficult to say where those intersections are. So they are primed to drift over time for any one of a number of reasons. And that's another factor that makes it difficult to relate these old historical records to anything modern. Because not only do we not have a way of translating the old terminology of deeds into modern coordinate systems, we don't really know where any of these things are anyway. And it's all pretty ephemeral. During COVID, my wife and I spent the winter here, and I taught remotely, and we were out walking around the boundary of the Koopman property up at the end of the road, and we came to one of the corners, and I was rummaging around, and I found this old post. This is the kind of post that was put in the ground the way it was done for many years. You cut a green conifer, and you'd use what's called a timber scribe to carve, and this says Koopman something something. You can't really make it out anymore. This says Libby L1R6. And I was looking at this, and it started to really ring a bell for me. And then suddenly it came back to me that I had cut this 50 years ago. And I was working as a surveyor for Steve Woodard in 1971. I cut this, carved it, and put it in the ground. And this is what it was like 50 years later. It was just about to disintegrate. So it's hardly surprising that these, there's nothing much to be found with these other marks in the ground. And if property up here ever becomes worth $1 million an acre, it's going to be a hell of a job figuring out where anybody's lines are. Yeah.
Back in '97, Dr. Mayer asked me to get involved with where exactly are the trails and on whose property it is in Randolph.
Yeah.
And this was, the AutoCAD error, but I didn't have access to a laboratory, so I ended up hand digitizing all of the property maps of Randolph.
Oh boy.
And the R maps, when you kind of laid everything out, the R maps are like like he had before. You've got, those are the broad general areas. And those actually show the township and range lines. And you could take the property descriptions, and obviously the tax maps are not surveyed, but they do give you distances. Things lined up pretty good until you got to the end of Randolph Hill Road. And then you got into the U, and the U are sort of the detailed areas.
Yeah.
And I spent 2 months trying to get things to line up. And I swear, whoever was, I think it was like, somebody wants a piece of land, okay, where do you want it? What dimensions you want? Because you could not, in any way, shape, or form, get those things to line up.
A lot of that land was sold by Jack Whitman over the years. Jack was really casual.
So that was going to get rolled out to the public.
Yeah. If you know where the maps are that you used, I'd love to see them.
I ended up handing it off to the guy. Essentially, that was used as the basis for the new RMC map. There was the one they used forever, and then they came to that new, and I ended up handing that stuff over. And so we were going to roll that out to the public, and some of the public saw it and said, "Those trails are not where they say they are." And that just happened in '97. Well, '98, I spent 6 or 7 weekends helping clear up after the mess. So every time I was up there, I'd run into a piece of iron and mark it down, and the trails seemed to be lined up pretty well on what the map was.
That's good.
And at the point, the RMC said, let's leave sleeping dogs lie. And the last time there was a copy of that in the tool shed. And that's the last, But yeah, that whole area, it was like I tried everything and I just could not get things to line up, so good luck to the people.
Not surprised.
A number of years ago, I had a colleague in the law school at Cornell who was a property lawyer. And he said to people, never, ever try to find the boundary between yourself and your next door neighbor. Because there are essentially common law boundaries that people say it's in those bushes. And if you try to get anything more precise, you fail. And you get angry. And there are lots of legal disputes
Yeah,
on exactly these kinds of issues.
yeah, there's a lot of tears in the shed of this. Many years ago, an extension was added to our, the house known as the Nickerson Cottage, which is to the right as you go into Master Glen. Somewhat later, the Miramiers told us, or told my uncle Alan, that this extension was illegally on their land, or something like that. So Alan engaged a different surveyor. Voila, it was back on our land. I do a little bit of consulting on this kind of stuff in Colorado, and I worked for a year for a guy whose parents owned one of these lots that is right up against the foothills in the city of Boulder. This is $5 million an acre land, and there's a property dispute that one landowner had one surveyor, and another landowner had another surveyor, and they both came up with different different results. And we combed through that and found, I think, what the problem was. But I don't think he's really going to get anywhere with it. I was talking to the county surveyor. He said, at some point, you just have to give up and walk away. Yeah, it's very messy and very imprecise.
This is a really kind of dopey question. Could you have accomplished what you know from the LIDAR by just going out and walking the road, the stone walls?
Yes, you could have. The problem is there's a lot of forest out there. These stone walls are nothing you miss. They're big,
Right.
but they're buried in the forest, and this just
So it would
gives us
just be
a
a
much
really
better.
difficult thing
Yeah,
that is made much easier by using this.
that's right. Yeah, it's not showing us anything that would be invisible otherwise. It's just shining a really bright light on something, making it just a lot easier to find our way around.
I do have another question, if I could.
Yeah.
Why do you suppose the lots and the walls are so squared off? Like, this is not Iowa, you know? Why do you suppose everything is like, it's kind of surprising, you know? Like not the boundary of a stream, and
Yeah, I don't know. Might have just been a, sort of intrinsic, desire for order.
The lots and ranges were all laid out geometrically.
Yeah, although these features, of course, are much smaller than those. It might have been descended from them a little bit, but, I think they like the orderliness. to tell the truth.
they what?
They like the orderliness of it.
It's good to be square. They wanted square fields.
Very
for
organized.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is everybody exhausted?
Great.
Okay. Go on, take a look at the stuff you like,
Yeah.
and check out the RMC nursery.
So could we mention that there is something here tomorrow night, perhaps you'd like to?
Yeah, so thank you very much for coming. Learned an awful lot. additional notes. This is obviously one of the events for the bicentennial event list that's going on all summer long. Tomorrow, actually, there is something here in Town Hall. It is the Arts and Memorabilia exhibit. That's, Gail and Caesar are here representing too, and I think, well, Mark, I see you, but Katie's not here. I don't see Katie. And Steve. So they've done an awful lot of work, so that'll be from 3 to 8 p.m., is that correct? Yeah, tomorrow. And then coming Saturday is also the resurgence, I guess, of the rendezvous in conjunction with the RMC gourmet hike, so that's actually occurring on Saturday. There's a lot of information, you guys out there, we recognize that, we try to get stuff into the weekly. So there's a lot of, any changes or notices are there, but we also have the website, for the bicentennial webpage, etc. Jean Malik has the table there. There is some merchandise she has brought over tonight if you want to chat with her. But just check the weekly. We're coming up to our big weekend in a couple of weeks, and then Tad is here too. You can come up to the table and just chat with him, etc. But thank you very much for coming out on a wonderful summer evening. At least it's a little cool in here.